Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. We were at the Total Dairy seminar last year, and so thank you to the Total Dairy team for the invitation to us all to come back. We ran out of time at the workshops last year, so it's wonderful to have the opportunity to come back and talk about some of the other things that I know these chaps are really passionate about. And one of the things that we wanted to talk a little bit about today was the idea that perhaps sometimes some trimmers may be over-trimming, and I don't think it's deliberate. I think it's just sort of everyone wants to improve foot health, and maybe in certain enthusiastic situations, the job is overdone a little bit. So it's going to be one of the themes that we want to talk about, but we also want to answer any questions that you might have. So I'm going to give plenty of opportunity to open up to questions from the audience, but we'd also like your comments as we go. So we will ask you at various points if you've got any comments or feedback. So I'm going to start out by introducing the three members of the foot trimming panel. And someone once said the definition of an expert is someone who travels a long way to give advice. And certainly we seem to have, all four of us have travelled a long way to be here, but they're also very well qualified, I should hasten to add. But Steve has come all the way from West Wales and battled the M6 yesterday to be here. And in terms of qualifications, you really can't beat the list that Steve's got if you want to be a foot trimming expert. He started trimming in '92. He became a genus foot trimmer and gained his Dutch diploma. He was then one of 7 people to gain the Dutch foot trimming school teaching diploma, which means there are very few foot trimming instructors in the UK, and he's one of the few fully qualified instructors. He's been running his own foot trimming business and instructing business for quite a number of years. He's an AHDB dairy mobility mentor. He's an MPTC level 3 assessor, LANTRA approved instructor, and he's also a bit of a movie star, starring in the Reese Heath foot trimming DVD, which for any of you that haven't seen it is an excellent DVD full of comedy moments and very good foot trimming advice. Moving on to the next member of the panel, David Rowe. I should have said, Steve Bradbury taught me how to foot trim, so I owe him a great debt of gratitude. But another person who has helped me develop my foot trimming skills is David here, David Rowe, all the way from the Cornish-Devon border. I need to get that right because, I'm hedging my bets a little bit there, but you're just over the border into Cornwall, I think. No? Oh. Go on. Oh, dear. Bad start. He's been milking cows since the age of 12, he tells me, but he, again, has been trimming cows for a long time, since 1995. He's MPTC level 3 qualified, and the reason I got to know David was because he went to Wisconsin a few years back and came back very inspired by the way that they've developed foot trimming style out there, and I was quite interested to learn, so David very kindly invited me along to a foot trimming course to teach the Dairyland style of foot trimming, which isn't vastly different from the true Dutch 5-step method. In fact, we'd say it's probably 95% similar, with a few ideas to maybe let people think about. He was a previous NACFT committee member, and he continues to run courses, running the Dairyland Hoof Care Institute courses in the UK. So it's great to have David on the panel. And last but not least, Tim Carter, who lives very close to where I live in Dorset and visits some of the very good farms that I know in Dorset. Tim, again, has a great farming pedigree. He grew up on dairy farms in Dorset. He joined Synergy Farm Health, a veterinary practice in Dorset, one of the biggest farm animal veterinary practices in the UK, and became a foot trimmer for them. And he was the lead foot trimmer. He would be too modest to say that. He was the lead foot trimmer, gaining his Dutch diploma and MPTC level 3 diploma qualifications. But he was one of the first foot trimmers in the UK to become an MPTC level 3 assessor, so one of the examiners for that qualification. And in 2012 set up his own foot trimming business. He was chairman of the NACFT between 2014 and 15, and continues to do very good work in Dorset and nationally on improving foot trimming standards. So again, great to welcome him onto the panel. So we've got a series of questions that have been put to us over the last few days and weeks. I'm going to be your chair and going to really try and encourage as many questions from the audience as we go as well. We've got 60 minutes. Time will fly, having seen the discussions that we had last summer. I will ask one of the members of the panel to answer the question in detail and maybe ask for comments from the other two. I'm going to have to be quite strict on time in order to make sure that we wrap up by 4 o'clock. What's important to say is that this subject, there's a lot of good experience, lots of opinions, but actually if you look at the research base, it's still a little bit weak. So there may be issues that we'll end up discussing where there'll be different views from the panel, and I think it's really important to say that these views are very valuable from the experienced members of the panel. You'll hear other views coming from elsewhere. They will also be from people's own experiences. A lot of the time, we're still waiting for the research to be done to prove certain things. So I think we're really privileged to have the experience here. We totted up how many years it was. It's quite a number of years of experience. But clearly, you'll have your own experiences, and we want to hear from those as well. So we better press on. Our first question, which has come in from a number of different sources: how do you accurately assess optimal toe length? How do you gauge that? Where do you measure from? And how do you measure it? And I think this has been a particularly pertinent question, given there's been some work come out of Nottingham University that has cast some doubt over some of the measurements that we've been using traditionally. And I'd like to invite Steve to start us off with this one. Partly because I've got a little video clip of you measuring toe length. Would you like to bring that up? Shall we bring that up next? Would you like that? Okay.
I have no idea what's coming.
Okay.
Okay, so what we've always done, can you just hold up there for a minute for me, please, Andrew? When we're trimming, we would measure from where the hard horn starts. So when you see me measuring this foot now, what I'm feeling for with my fingernail is the start of the hard horn. So if you put your fingernail on the coronet, we know it's going to be soft and spongy. As you come towards the toe, you're going to feel spongy horn. Then you're going to feel hard horn. So you measure from where the hard horn starts to the tip of the toe. What we would say, for an average black and white cow, we would want that 7.5 centimetres. Common sense would say also, if we have a smaller cow, we want it shorter. So a Jersey, we cut to about 6.5 centimetres. If you've got a honking Great Charolais cow, you go longer again. So, does that answer the question? Do you want any more information?
So, in which situations do you see people trimming to an incorrect length? Are people trimming too short in certain situations?
Yeah, they are, because it's down to practice. If you go out to Holland, you train. If you go and work with them, there's a guy called Peter Klosterman who used to head up their foot trimming school, and what he tries to teach is you trim to the size of the cow. The problem is people use an excuse. So you say, oh, this one's slightly short. Oh, I thought it was a small cow. This one's too long. Oh, I thought it was a big cow. So I tend to teach one length on a sensible sized cow. If people can do that accurately, you can soon tell them, oh, it's a big cow, leave it 0.5 centimetre longer. If it's a small cow, leave it 0.5 centimetre shorter. But some people just guess. So there's a lot of guessing goes on.
Okay, so are you measuring every cow?
Yes, every cow. Every cow I trim, I measure, still.
Measure with the measuring gauge?
No, I use my hand, and there's a bit of a misconception, oh, you use 4 fingers. I've got big hands. That's actually that's bigger than 7.5 centimetres. If you've got a little girl, 5 foot tall, she's going to have very dinky hands. She'll be too small. So what we do is we say use the block to start. Once you get the hang of that, what you can then do is use your hand, check with the block, and you'll eventually wean yourself off that block. But I still measure every cow now.
So how important is this?
It's pretty critical, really, because so if you've got a cow that's too long, you measure it to the correct length, any excess you cut off. So the next step then is to thin the toe depth. So we work on on average, about a 7 mil toe depth. But it's important to understand that that 7 mil is correct for a 7.5 centimetre claw. So if you make a boo-boo and you cut it short, you've then got to allow for that. Otherwise, you'll be through to the quick. So you're not, even if you don't hit it in the toe, in the quick, if it's too short and you try and trim, take too much off, you'll be through to the quick, which is live tissue.
Okay, so if we go back to the Nottingham work, where their recommendation is 8.5 centimetres rather than a 7.5 centimetres, how do you interpret their findings?
Right. That's a nice question, Nick. Thank you. Right, from what I understand from the Nottingham work, and I'm no expert on this is what I understand, they are actually starting, but they use an X-ray machine, and they're starting where the horn starts. So they're back here somewhere. So they're saying use an 8.5 centimetre claw, but they're starting in a different place to us. Now, we've had a little bit of a play about with this. We actually think, although it sounds outwardly there's a centimetre difference, we think it's probably 2 to 3 mil difference, simply because they're starting further back than us.
Okay, good. Okay. Tim, David, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd say with the measure, and as Steve has already pointed out, he doesn't measure using the gauge every time. I think for us, experience would tell us by eye, we roughly know that. But having said that, it's still a good idea to check with the correct gauge every now and again, just to make sure you are getting it right. Because it's so easy, especially if you've got a buckle in that front wall. That obviously makes it very, very difficult to give you the correct toe length. So it's a good idea to just go back and check that. And also, when Steve said about taking down the 7 mil sole thickness, before I take anything off of there, it's a good idea to have your gauge or the blunt end of your knife and just put a bit of pressure on that sole. If it flexes, you do not touch it, because that's when you start getting into thin soles and ultimately over trimming. Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
For me, I can't emphasise how important this measurement is, and to get it correct. It is the first step of your foot trimming. You really have got to make sure that, for start with, the foot's clean. You know, there's no point in trying to measure it when you've got manure all over the front of it. So you've got to have a clean front edge to it when you measure on the dorsal wall. And it's still the most crucial measurement you make. I think we'd all agree with that.
Oh, definitely. Yep.
And as Tim said, for me, as trimming for as long as I have, I probably wouldn't measure every single one of them, but I can guarantee I measure about 1 in 10. But I measure them after I trim them for my own safety, just to see I'm still doing the right job. And again, it's through experience. But if I was teaching somebody and they don't use the gauge, whichever gauge it is, you know, that's the main thing. You've got to use these blocks and these gauges, because that gives you an extra. But it's only an indicator. That's the main thing. It's an indicator. It's not actually it's got to be that. It's an indicator. Okay. And Tim mentioned earlier about the toe thickness. So my indicator always is, I always press the toe if I think we're near the say 6 or 7 mil that I want. I won't even touch that inside claw, because I think we're at the right length and everything. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, and you mentioned cleaning off.
Yeah.
So
it's lovely and clean.
He did clean.
Yeah,
He did clean.
yeah.
You can see it's been cleaned.
Steve cleaned the foot off there. I was going to ask, you've got a way of cleaning off.
Yeah. I carry lots of knives, but I've got one particular knife. It's called a Yako knife, because the guy that told me about it's called Yako de Buren from South Africa. It's just a big old blunt knife, and I just clean the front edge of the claw off with it. But you can equally do it with your gauge and everything. But it's got to be clean to make the measurement right.
Okay, so that's a calibration that you do. Yeah. Okay.
Nickname from.
So throwing that out to the audience, are there any sort of comments or thoughts on any of that? Because it seems a very specific point to start on, but actually it's a critical point, because if you don't get that first step right, then the rest of it really goes wrong. And cutting to too short a toe length is a very common problem that we see out there. Any comments? Nothing yet. Okay. So another question that came from Harry Ralph, sort of related to the previous question. What are the symptoms of over-trimming? And we've got a foot here that's clearly been over-trimmed. So what I might do is hand this one over to Tim to answer.
Okay, yep. Very good one. First thing to notice is back here. I know he looks like he's been cleaning it off because obviously, well, hopefully he's going to apply a block on there, but destroying the heel height on the medial claw. Okay, so that would be your next step after doing your length, taking the sole down, but it says, and we say, you have to spare the heel on the medial claw. And again, it goes back to testing the sole. If it doesn't yield under pressure, yes, you could take a little bit off in the toe trying to balance it, not, put the grinder over, which is what has happened in here, because what will happen in there, you've destroyed that heel height, so the cow will naturally sit back in the heel. Also, you can see around here, you've got a lesion there, and that is another good indicator that it's been over-trimmed, because in here it's what we call a toe ulcer, which means you've taken too much off there, and it won't happen at trimming. It'll happen 3-4 days after the trimmer's gone, or after the farmer's done it. She will be chronically lame, okay? The only thing to do with that then is, which is hopefully what he's done here, clean this off to apply a block to get the pressure off of that site, trim it out. And also, you can see going between the toes here, you don't need to go between the toes with a grinder or even a knife. If you've got a bit of loose horn in here, so what? It doesn't matter. It's just purely cosmetic. It has no functional benefit whatsoever. So please don't do that. And around the walls with a grinder as well is another common thing you will see the foot trimmer do. They've got the power tool in their hands, and it's so easy just to whip around the toes. It makes them look pretty, but again, it has no functional benefit. And all you're doing is destroying the hard wall, which she needs for stability and help protect the rest of the sole. She needs as much protection as she can get. You're talking a big, quite heavy animals there, and they need as much sole stability as possible. Okay, anything else you want to?
So, Tim, just give people an idea of what you would do with that inside claw. Let's suppose she wasn't being prepared for a block. Let's say she was a sound cow. How much would you trim on a typical inside claw?
Okay, for me, personally, functional trimming we'll talk about now. For me, it's about the length. If the length is right, then obviously if I don't have to take anything off the length, when I say length, it's 7.5 centimetres. For a big Holstein cow, sometimes I leave them longer, more edge to more towards more the 8 centimetre in length. So if the length is right, I don't touch the medial claw at all, unless it's just swipe down through there with either the knife or the grinder, just to give you that stability, to bring her up, to make her flat. When she puts her foot down, that has to be flat. I certainly don't take anything off the heel, and I moving along to step 3, which is what we call the modelling. I wouldn't go in between the claws at all unless there's any loose horn back here. I don't model the lateral claw and medial claw, sorry. There's no need to. You need to leave as much there for the stability as you can. The traditional Dutch 5-step method says you need to go in and model that out. We're saying, no, don't do that. You need as much there as possible. Even if it's loose horn around here, leave it, don't take it off. And after all the years of doing this, we still get clients that we go to on a regular basis saying, well, aren't you going to investigate that? No. If she's not lame, if she's in for a functional routine trim, don't go chasing little black marks around the white line or anywhere like that. Because if you let her out and she is lame and you've missed it, because if they're in a race, it's very difficult to see for us lame cows coming up, because we don't know which ones they've put in, because she's walking a bit funny, we'll stick her in, the foot trimmer's coming. If they're all in a race, you don't see them, with a little limp or whatever it is. So it is quite easy to miss it, and we don't go looking for lesions unless they are visible. So if you let her out the crush and she walks away and you think, oh crap, missed something there, get her back in, do it again. Okay, but don't do it as a routine.
So, Tim, what proportion of inside claws would you just not touch at all?
Most of them.
Most of them, huh?
Yeah. A lot of my clients are on sand yards, so therefore you get quite even soles anyway. A little bit of length, not always on the medial claw. The medial claw usually stays the same because it's under far less trauma than the lateral claw. It's the lateral claw you get your problems with. If you get a problem with your medial claw, it's going to be a sole fracture or something like that, and you will notice that straight away because she will be walking on her toes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, carry on.
I think someone's keen to...
Just on this, it's environmentally based. The environment plays such a big role to your foot trimming. Not every cow is the same, not every environment is the same. So what Tim's suggesting of actually leaving the medial inside claw is relevant, especially for sand herds, because a hoof on the bottom of the foot is money in the bank. You never get it back, especially on your high wear surfaces, 3 times a day milking, sand, long walks. So I've only last week I'd done a herd of cows, and I never touched one single medial claw. Never touched them because they're on a high wear surface. They were already at 7.5 or less, so my hands are tied. You just cannot afford to touch them. All I'd done was take a model out of the lateral outside claw and just reduce it back 2/3 because we just couldn't do any more to them. Not every cow stand, not every single farm is standard. You've just got to tailor your trimming to meet the environment where the cow is.
Okay. Steve, would you add anything to that?
No, I would agree. I mean, the most important thing to do is trim to the prevailing conditions, and that just takes experience, practice.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of symptoms, what things are you looking out for if you were concerned about over trimming and what you see? Yeah, what things go.
Well, normally what you see, it depends how severe it is. If somebody makes a real hash of it, obviously the cow goes lame straight away, but most of them are quite subtle. So a lot of lameness is this over trimming. The problem is causing the front third. Usually people make them quite thin, perhaps don't realise they've done it. Cow then punctures it. Cow's usually okay for about 10 days, then it goes hopping lame, because any lameness in the front third is quite serious. So that's what you tend to see.
Yeah.
From looking at cows walking.
Yeah.
And the other thing you mentioned.
Records are a good thing as well on indicating things. If I go to a farm, say troubleshooting or something, and I see a lot of toe ulcers, a lot of necrosis, I'm starting to question the foot trimming method right away, because I don't see this, and I don't suppose Tim sees this, and I'm sure Steve doesn't see this. If we looked at all our records, combined them all, I guarantee that we wouldn't probably have many toe ulcers and we wouldn't have much necrosis in our regular herds, because we are just so respectful of this area. We don't over trim. We don't make cosmetically beautiful feet. We want functional feet, or functionally trimmed feet.
Tim, you wanted to add something?
Can I just say something as well? The other thing I would say is if you do make a hash of one, particularly in the front third, just put a block on straight away. Okay. So if you do cut a cow in the front third or make a thin, just put a block on straight away. The cow, you'll probably never see anything different with a cow looking at her walking. But if you leave it, once you start getting bits of infected quick and go down this route, it takes a long time to get them right.
Yeah, and the other thing just to add to that is be honest. If you make a mistake, we're not infallible. We still make mistakes now. I still do it. I'll be honest with you. I do make mistakes, but it's how you get yourself out of that and put it right. If you're honest with the farmer, say, look, I've done a bit too much on there. I've blocked her. She will be absolutely fine, but if there are any problems, give me a shout. I'll come and sort them out. And people respect you for that, because we're all human.
Just on perhaps the final bit of that, it's more important what you leave on than what you take off of the foot. For me, and I think the rest of the rest of us would be the same. We don't want a pile of horn on the floor. It's more important to be left on the cow's foot.
Yeah, Dave.
No, go on.
Yeah, all these things come back, and we'll have massive discussion going on, haven't I? But yeah, just to go back to what David said there, you're not paying for the chips on the floor, and it is quite important as well to say that when you've got a cow in the crush, don't be afraid to pick it up, say, she's absolutely fine, I can't do anything with this, put it down and let her go. Occasionally we get farmer looking over your shoulder thinking, oh, he's not done anything to that cow. But that's when you've got to have your conversation with your farmer, or if farmers are in the audience, this is when you need to notice that when the foot trimmer comes and he picks it up and says, yeah, it's absolutely fine, puts it down and does nothing to it, that's fine. He's actually being honest, and because that's when you get your over trimming, you pick it up and think, oh, he's having a, farmer's looking old to do something, and that's when you start making mistakes.
So should we be referring to foot checks rather than routine foot trims? Yeah, that was
going through my mind earlier. I forgot it then. Okay. But yeah, it's move away from saying, functional routine trimming. It's pick the cow up, check it. And this goes well for the 100-day. This is why we say 100-day checks now and not 100-day trims. Because if you've done her at drying off and you've done her correctly and you give her a nice wide model, bring her back in 100 days after calving, pick her up. Yeah, all you may have to do then is just take the model out a little bit more again, but she should be quite sound.
Okay, I think we've got a question at the back.
All right, I'll hold it.
Yeah. I think I heard you correctly. It's Charlie Foster, I'm a local vet. You thought that toe necrosis, because you're not seeing it on your regular herds, you suspect over trimming as being a predisposing factor to that. I suppose I question that mostly because I see toe necrosis, I find, is an odd condition. I see it on some herds quite high prevalence and others not at all. But I see it on suckle herds sometimes where they're getting virtually no attention at all. So I think, and I'm certainly thinking on some suckle herds where I know it's not over trimming.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. But in certain circumstances, it would definitely, after a toe ulcer, in the right conditions, you would get necrosis. But I would also definitely agree that I also see suckler cows or in-calf heifers that have never been trimmed with necrosis in the claw. So it can be infected in a different way. But I'm convinced that it is also through toe ulcers and over trimming. But I do agree as well. There's other ways in.
I think there's two ways of looking at this. Is that, being very simplistic, if you don't make holes in the feet, however those holes get made, dermatitis doesn't invade the claw. So it's a bit of a two-pronged attack. If you stop the damage to the claw and you control the digital dermatitis, you will get less toe necrosis. But they're not all caused by over-trimming. No, but it will certainly influence the number you get. But also, the more you have, the more you tend to get as well.
Yeah. Is that okay? Has that answered your question?
It does largely. I'd be quite interested to know if you, as a panel, you think there are, between your, I find toe necrosis frustrating, very frustrating condition. I'm wondering if as a panel you notice any particular environmental conditions which you think amongst the farms which you go where you do see it are common.
Go on, Steve.
Yeah, it's being simplistic again. It's about if you don't make holes in the feet. So what you've got to look at is where those cows are, usually where they're walking. So if you put them up rough tracks, you puncture the feet, dermatitis, you've got a hole, in it goes, away we go. So a lot of it is down to environment as well. So if you've got cows on good surfaces, you don't tend to get it as much. Also, if you've got cows on slats, they can actually snap their toe ends off. Again, you create a whole different type of scenario. Away we go again. So it's mainly down to environment. And the other half is the dermatitis control.
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. Dermatitis plays a huge role in this. The higher infection rate of your dermatitis on the farm, if you add that with other impacts, as in maybe over-trimming or a high wear area, the more likely you are going to get necrosis.
Okay, I just wanted to add, like you, I used to find toe necrosis a very frustrating condition to treat. and there's a foot trimmer from Wisconsin, Carl Berge, who these chaps know very well. He came over 4 years ago and showed me his approach, which was quite unlike anything I'd seen done before in the UK, which was a fairly radical approach to paring out all the underrun horn. And overnight, my success rate just changed. Rather than calling these chronic non-healing lesions, they were lesions, if I could get to them early enough, then I was pretty confident with 1 or 2 goes I could get them back, healthy horn, growing back. And it's really transformed my approach as a vet. Now, I can use local anaesthetic. It's pretty challenging for these chaps who haven't got the access to the local anaesthetic to deaden the foot and pare these things out really well. But I think it might be interesting to hear how these chaps have got on with this sort of approach, because I know you'll have come across this.
Myself, as Nick said, I've got very good success with healing these, but I always have a vet present helping me out, obviously, because I can't do some of the work involved. But if it's treated right, you can cure them. Not necessarily not necessarily first time, but if you keep at them, you'll cure them. And you know, some real good cows will get this, and it's worth persevering with them, and you will get a result.
Tim?
Yep, I'm same as David. As Nick has said, I went to Wisconsin 2 years ago now and did the course over there with Carl Berge, and it totally changed the way I trim lesions. I'm far more aggressive than what I was before that. I too get quite good success rate with curing necrotic toes. Before I was guilty of saying, oh, we got, you know, non-healing lesions, you know, and an increase in non-healing lesions, down to purely because of my lack of knowledge of how to trim around and treat them. But as David said, yeah, you may not get them all first time, but it's a great feeling when you do get them, because when you start, it's just a mess. And yes, you are going to see a bit of blood, but you've got to be brave and just keep at it.
Okay.
Nick, can I
Yep, go on.
ask you, Owen Atkinson did a bit of work. Yeah, sorry. Owen Atkinson did a bit of work when I was with the NACFT on toe necrosis, and he started getting the idea that it may have come from the coronet down. Do you know how he got on with that? Because they're not all caused by toes, as we know.
Yeah, so I think it probably does. So are you all familiar with toe necrosis? It's this, some people call them rotten toes, where you've got digital dermatitis forming this chronic lesion right in the toe end. And obviously the two likely routes that they can become established is, as we said, through a toe ulcer like we've got here. That could lead on to a toe necrosis. Or as Tim mentioned, Owen Atkinson wrote about these lesions getting established in the coronary band and working their way down. And I think it probably varies from farm to farm, and it varies from cow to cow which route it is. But it seems likely it's both routes in different situations. But
I'm just thinking this may be a case for the gentleman's
suckler cows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Definitely.
a possible
So
route in for that.
It could be your digital dermatitis tracking up between the claws and around the coronary band and getting established down the toe through the dorsal wall, along the front of the toe, down to the toe that way.
Well, just while we're talking about necrosis and myself, I'm working with a large herd in Cheshire at the moment and have been for about 18 months. They would have a veterinary out every 2 weeks to treat necrotic claws. After I took on the foot trimming and trained their staff a bit better, we don't get any new necrosis, and there's nothing that's changed apart from the trimming protocol.
Okay. Nice. Are there any other questions related to that? So we've actually got a video. Oh, yeah. So in the notes, there are a few things that we listed as either the 7 deadly sins or minor misdemeanors, but I think we're all agreed they're probably actually more deadly sins than misdemeanors. So they're there for you to refer to. But what if say you come across a thin sole. So thin soles might be because of over trimming, but it could be in high wear situations, and we'll all come across that fairly commonly. So there's a video clip here. Tim, I think this is you, isn't it?
This is me. Okay, so do you want me to talk through what I'm doing here?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm doing here is just drying the foot. It looks like I've over-trimmed it straight away. Can we pause this, Andrew, please? Yeah, just go back then, if we could, please. Yeah, you can see here, I've done here what you would like to think happened to this first foot, but it's not. All I've done there is I haven't used a cutting disc on the grinder. I've used what we call a rotary rasp, and all that's done is just cleaned the foot. Gone right round and cleaned it. It's the only time you will see me go around the toe with a grinder, okay? And it's not to remove any horn, it's just to scuff it up, clean it.
It's a sanding grinder, isn't it? A abrasive.
Yes, it's got like lots of little teeth on it. It hasn't got blades on it at all. It's lots of little teeth. So what I'm doing now is drying it, get ready to apply a block, because over here, if we go back, does this one show the soft sole?
No.
No, because I did block one in similar video for a thin sole. So yeah, just going to dry the foot, apply a block, and the block I would apply on these thin soles, because you don't need the height. I'll just get my props here. It's what we call an AccuSole, and I can pass it around for everyone to see if you want to pass it around. It's just a thin plastic block, as opposed to the full thickness block, because we stick these on now. If we put one of these on a cow with just a thin sole, she is not going to walk. She will walk better, don't get me wrong, but she will not walk perfectly, because there's too much height there and for the stability reasons. So we apply these little thin blocks, and not always on the good claw. We can apply the thin AccuSoles, as we call them, directly on to a thin sole. You will be surprised how well she walks and copes with that. The reason we do that is if you've got a cow with a thin sole or any kind of lameness, they will try and shift the weight on to the other claw. And if it's a medial claw that is thin, which I've seen quite a few of on sandherds and high wear incidents, not caused over trimming, where they try and shift the weight onto the lateral claw, I apply the AccuSole to the medial, which is the thin one, and just brings her back in, and she walks superbly.
So in effect, you're increasing the thickness of the sole with a bit of plastic.
Yes, yeah, just to stop the pressure there, and it just evens out and brings her back into the correct stance.
Okay.
And I think David's going to
come on.
this.
No, go on, no, you say it, Dave.
So with Tim suggesting about putting these soles on, the sole grows around about 4 mil a month. I think I'm correct, Nick?
Yep.
So just by putting a sole on for a month, you've actually gained 4 mil on that sole, because it's not a wearing surface anymore. So if it's on for 6 weeks, we gained about 6 mil. So within 6 weeks, you can remove that, because that actual plastic won't wear out; it will stay the same.
Okay, good. Right. Shall we move on to the next question? Right. If body condition score loss results in a shrinking of the digital cushion, which is the fat pad inside the claw, which we know protects the foot from things like sole ulcers and white lines, should we be trimming the foot less, or less frequently perhaps, to protect her? And that's from one of the Dugdale nutritionists. Thank you.
No.
Hang on, I need to think.
No, I'd have to say no. Do you want to enlarge on this?
Sorry.
Thank you. Right, so this now is again coming back to Nottingham work. So John Huxley and his gang up there have done some work. So if you're not aware of this, what they're saying is that if we have a fat pad in the foot, so the fatter the cow, the bigger the fat pad. So the fat pad then offers protection to the, to the foot, to the sole of the foot. So in a thin cow now, we've obviously got less fat pad. Now, traditionally, it's been thought that the cow goes thin because she's lame, because she has a problem with her foot. But what John is showing now with his research is that the cow, got to get this the right way around now, sorry, I've lost my thread. The cow that's thin is actually at a much higher risk of going lame.
That's it.
Yeah, simply because we have less fat pad in the foot. So, I mean, that's fine, it makes sense, and it's been accepted internationally. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
So, no, you were basically saying we still need to blame the nutritionist for that.
What? Because no. I mean, we're back to the thing that, John Cook as well, we're back to looking after these dry cows and getting cows in the right condition and everything else at calving. We're back around to that again.
But it's probably about managing different aspects of the lameness, isn't it? So there's probably a nutritional job to manage the condition score. Yeah. Does it mean that we should be careful what we do with lame cows, or should we actually be doing more? Sorry, with thin cows, or should we be doing more to protect?
Take more modelling. I'll do more.
You do more modelling,
Yeah.
I think is what. Do you want to expand on
so
that?
for me, to answer this question, no, I wouldn't do less. Yes, I'd probably do more, because if we actually have the cow in the crush more often, we can take a model out of the foot. The model has less pressure on the foot, and with less pressure on the foot, we probably protect the fat pad better. So I'd probably say we could probably trim that cow more.
And maybe there's a role in improving foot angle and getting her up on her toe a little bit more. So,
but obviously, environment dependent again,
Yeah, just put her on a high maintenance. Just bring her back more often.
bring her back for foot trimming, foot checks.
Foot checks,
more
not
often.
necessarily trimming, but just bring her back to make sure she's still got the correct.
Okay, there's a question at the back there. I think, is that Mike?
Yeah, it's Mike. Mike Christian. I'm a local vet. How often would you be doing your foot checks, and when?
Okay. We may as well answer that now. I think that question is coming up, but the mic's in your hand.
Well, I'd split these, because I think a lot depends what system the cows are on. So if you look at cows that are either housed all the year round on a high input, high output system, or housed for the majority of the year, probably say do them twice a year. So you do them at drying off. Personally, I do them about 120 days post-calving. In a perfect 365 year, then you do it twice, roughly 6 months apart. And what we're trying to do by this is just keep the weight where we want it. I think if you've got extended grazing cows, they're doing a lot of miles on tracks. Wear tends to be more of a problem than growth. They're wearing more than they're growing. So for me, I just do those once a year, and then do the lame cows as and when they occur.
Okay.
I think the other thing we would say as well is that if the lame cows are treated promptly, we've got a much better cure rate on them as well, so that's also quite important.
Okay. David?
Yeah, I mean, I'm virtually the same I'm exactly the same as what Steve said, but again, environment would dictate, so sometimes you might want to be 80, 90 days after calving, depending on environment. If it's sand herds, you can be a bit later, but if it's an environment where the cows aren't lying down enough, perhaps I might bring that mid-lactation trim forward, and some herds I might even implement a third trim later on in lactation. But going back to what we were saying about these cows, some cows I've got on a regular schedule. If I see a cow 2 or 3 times, and I've blocked her and she's got an ulcer again in say 3 months, so I say, well, why don't I bring her out back in 8 weeks and just trim a model out and a bit of hemorrhaging, rather than a month later and I've got a blocker. So I've got like my regular frequent flyers, I'd call them. They'll be in the crush every maybe 8 weeks, but I'm not doing much to them, and all my farms I work with say, well, get them in. If you think they need trimming, trim them, because there's no harm in picking the foot up and taking a model out. We're not over trimming them by doing that.
So it's about having a frequency fit for the system, but also tailored to the individual cow. Tim, did you want to add anything?
No, I think I'm pretty much the same as David.
Okay. Right. There's a question, I think.
Don't give him.
Ah.
You could have got out, Jonathan. That's just pure laziness. No,
I've been quiet for too long, I think. Just wanted to ask you in your thoughts with maiden heifers. When should they be trimmed or checked pre-calving?
Okay, yeah, this is a big thing for us. What we're advocating now is trimming heifers before they calve. And for us, the optimal time would be 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, maybe a little too far, but definitely 6 weeks before calving, just to bring them in, balance them, and take a model out to prevent any bruising in the typical sole ulcer site. So does that?
And Tim, is that blanket, or does it work better on some units than others? Are there certain situations where that has a really big benefit?
I think on cows that are predominantly housed all year round, it would have a great benefit to those. I don't work with enough extended grazed herds, to be honest, or cows that are extensively grazed, same thing. To say whether that would have any benefit to those, but for me personally, extensively housed cows, and that would be the thing.
Okay, David.
Jonathan, thank you for your question.
You'll say pie.
I know, not all the time. So, just a quick little story on this. Lady doing a foot trimming course this week, heard a presentation 2 years ago on this. She implemented it to her heifers, went back to talk to her husband. Her husband thought she'd gone insane. It's not the first time, apparently. But anyway, she implemented this, and she told me on Monday she hasn't had a heifer lame in the first lactation since she's been doing it. So that might answer a few questions.
Okay. I think there was a hand up at the back there.
Hello, Alex Phelps, local farmer. Just to move the subject on a little bit, because I thought time's going on, could I ask about white line separation? What causes it? And sometimes we have heifers that calve that have never been trimmed, but there's some develop pus up the sidewall, and then you have to clean out the sidewall, and the sidewall goes up further. You're not supposed to trim that much of the sidewall, but to get rid of the infection before it bores out the top of the sidewall. What is the answer to this problem? Would the panel like to comment?
Steve, you've got the microphone again.
Right, okay. So white line separation, because we got asked this one yesterday actually as well. So white line separation, it's caused really from two major reasons. One is just walking on poor surfaces, because your white line is the weakest part of the foot, its way sole and your wall joint. So if you put cows up a poor track, we all know we're going to get problems in the white line. So that obviously applies to cow housing as well. So that would be your first option. The other one is just shearing forces, turning sharp corners. So Julia asked me this question yesterday. She'd got a similar problem in milking heifers with one of her clients. So if you've got cows turning sharp corners, you get a lot of shearing force on the outside claw. That creates problems. Same issue. So the first question I would ask you is the surface they're stood on, walking on, good? And the next question is, what is the definition of a good surface? So what I would say is, wherever we send our cows, we need to walk in our socks. Okay? Forget the wet and slop factor, but just the surface. Okay? So are these heifers on a good surface?
These are cows and
cows.
and heifers, but odd ones that we haven't done before. But we have had less problems since we did mat a rotary parlour, so they were turning on a sharp corner. And since we've matted it, it has been less of a problem. But it's when you still get the odd problem ones. How do the foot trimmers solve the problem? If the pus is going up the side, do they trim it away and just have to keep trimming it? Does it eventually grow back, that side wall? It seems to be a very hard one to cure, a bit like tonocrosis.
Shall I give this one to Tim?
Yeah,
Spread it
by
out
all
a bit.
means.
Okay, yeah, so when you get a problem like that, you've got to take that entire side wall away, because what's happening is starting at the white line and it's tracking all the way up and bursting out of the coronet. Do I understand that correctly? Is that what's happening? Yeah? Okay, so the first thing to do is stick a block on the other side, get the weight off of it, and you've got to remove the entire side wall of that section. If you start at the white line and work your way back up through, you will find a line.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying remove the loose horn
Yeah,
on
sorry.
the sidewall.
Yeah, sorry.
Not, yeah.
Just going off on one now. Yeah, all the loose horn, you will see a line up through, and you've got to follow it, open it up completely. Anything that your knife can get underneath is what we deem as loose horn, and it's got to come off. Okay, you've got to be brave, and like I said, you're probably going to see blood, but you've got to keep going because it's not going to heal properly if you've got loose horn there. You need to remove all that so that the new good horn can grow, and it will cover over, and you will heal it up.
Any sort of pastes or any sort of bandages or anything like that, or you just leave it open?
Personally, I wouldn't bandage those at all. I'd just blue spray it with whatever topical spray you got, or antiseptic spray.
Yeah.
And
David, I think you wanted to add something.
go on then, Dave.
Just to finish that one off, when you're trimming out that lesion, that white line, I very often have got a cotton wool pad or something like that if I'm making a little bit of red stuff, and I'll be dabbing it, and if it still smells, I'm convinced that I need to do a bit more, because if it smells in that area, we probably need a little, there's probably still a bit of loose horn to remove. So, you know, I use that as a bit of indicator as well. Sometimes I'm sort of smelling a bit and keep trimming.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say that you're very respectful of healthy quick, aren't you? So you're not hacking into the foot, not removing the live tissue. You're just paring away the underrun horn.
Yeah, I think the thing you've got to remember with this is that in fact, you've got the quick up the side wall, and you've got hard horn pushing in on that. So all you want to do is take all that hard horn out, all the loose horn out. So when you run the fingers up either side of the wall, so it's all nice and smooth, because the actual hard horn pushing on the quick on the live tissue actually causes most of the pain. So if you can get it all out clean, stop it pressing, the cow will walk a lot better. The same applies with sole ulcers. If you can take that collar hard horn from around the sole ulcer, stop the pinching, the actual hard horn pushing on the sole ulcer causes a lot of the pain. Cows will feel better straight away.
And you'd always block these cows?
White lines every time.
I wouldn't say every time. No, well, no. A lot will depend. Yeah, well, here.
Yeah.
Right. No, well, I think I'll be a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think A, it depends on the size of the lesion. B, it depends how lame the cow is. And C, it depends where the lesion is. The further back it is, the easier it is to get height difference, i.e. we can drop the one claw and put weight on the other claw. But in fairness, the majority of wall ulcers we would block, but I wouldn't say we have to block everyone.
Okay. Good. Okay. And we'd probably use a bit more anti-inflammatory than we may be used to as well. So I think the anti-inflammatory is a really important addition. Go on, Tim.
Yeah, if you're trimming them out as yourself, or you're getting the foot trim, what you need is a really sharp knife for these as well, because that makes the job a whole lot easier, because you're removing hard wool horn here, and it's quite easy to slip. If you've got a blunt knife, you're putting more force behind that knife to get in and get that loose horn off, and that's when you cut into the quick. Okay.
This has been one of the quickest hours of my life, I have to say. I can't believe we're coming towards the end. There was I don't know if we've got time for much more. I want the audience to have an opportunity to ask any other questions. There was a question about what common foot problems we see on farm, and there was another one about what alternatives are there to formalin which you find effective. But if there's any other burning questions from the audience, yeah.
Well, the biggest problem on farm is digital dermatitis.
Okay.
If we're going quick.
Yeah.
Alternative to formalin would be copper sulfate.
Any others?
That's what the question's about,
For me.
actually.
Go on then.
Far away.
When you pick a foot up and it's got digi, what's your first treatment, and does it differ on the stage that the digi's at?
Oh, good question.
Is there any treatments that you would keep away, like you wouldn't do that maybe you've seen other people do?
Okay, for me, when I first see a dermatitis, obviously there's 5 different stages of dermatitis. from M1 to M4 and all the points, but we're not going into that. If it's a fairly relatively new one, I'll spray it with whatever I've got available at the crush, which will be from the vet. I don't believe any potions or powders, or I might, if it's a really nice one, I might wrap it with, again, an antibiotic from the vet, but I'll make sure that wrap comes off that day, because I don't like wraps on too long. As for putting copper sulfate and anything like that on these lesions, what I say is you wouldn't put that in your eye, so please don't put it on the cow's foot, because it's the same, you know, it's a living cell. So, and if it's a worse stage, I'd still just spray with spray, because some of these are going to be reoffenders, and whatever we do with them, it's going to come back. So really, by just spraying it will help it for a bit, but that cow's going to come back. But an early stage, an M2, a couple of sprays generally will get a good result.
Steve?
Yeah, I would agree with that, really. If you need to spray more than once, if you're struggling with it, you bandage with some antibiotic powder. Most important thing is if we foot bath, we try and prevent it.
Good message.
I think we can get probably 98-99% control of the digi on a good farm with correct foot bathing procedure.
Tim?
Yep, no, David's itching to go back.
Oh, yeah.
So going back to treating it at the crush, we're too late. For a foot trimmer or a vet or a farmer, if you're treating it at the crush dermatitis, you're too late. We should be treating this as probably a foot bath. The best farm I've got has got no dermatitis, and that guy washes the feet off every night in the milking parlour with a hose pipe. That's the only treatment he does. He had dermatitis, and he's a dear old guy, and he just said, well, he said, I had it once, and I didn't like it. So from now on, he honestly, every night they wash them in the parlour, and I trimmed them last week or the week before, 152 cows, no dermatitis whatsoever, and I'm pretty critical when it comes to looking for it.
Yeah. So it's probably important to say a foot bath isn't going to cure a cow with digital dermatitis, but a foot bath will prevent the next cow getting digital dermatitis. I think we're actually, thank you very much for your question there. I think, looking at Jonathan's face, we're probably coming towards the end of the session. So can I just say, if you've got any other questions, then the trimmers are going to be here for a little while. So I'd just like to thank our panel and thank Total Dairy for the invitation to be here. And I'll hand you back to Jonathan.